You're listening to
The Marne Report.
Hello and welcome to the Marne Report. I'm Sergeant First Class Jason Hull, 3rd Division Sustainment Brigade Public Affairs. Today we'll be talking with Colonel Jennifer McDonough, Commander of the 3rd DSB, which is redeploying after a 9-month rotation in Europe to support operations and multinational training, to build military interoperability with our allies, contingency response capabilities, and to deter security threats in the European theater. Task Force Provider has led a multi-composition force of sustainment units from the Active Army, the Reserve, and the National Guard components, and has supported 2 divisions and 5 brigades across more than a dozen countries. Did that capture the mission correctly?
Yeah, no, I think you covered it all, Sergeant Hull. This has been a tremendous opportunity that we've had since we've been here, and I think that the task force has done a phenomenal job getting after each one of those kind of goals and objectives that you just mentioned there. We're much more lethal, we're much more ready, and we're much more interoperable with our partners here in Eastern Europe.
Now, if we could, ma'am, we just concluded the 5th Corps Sustainment Conference, and that was put together by the Brigade Support Operations team, and I learned so much about the scope and scale of our sustainment mission here in Area of Operations Victory. I wonder if we could start by discussing what the Sustainment Conference was all about and what it accomplished and how it helps us hand this mission off to the 1st Cavalry Division Sustainment Brigade that is coming to relieve us as we pack up and go home.
Yeah, absolutely. So we were very lucky to have had a great rip when we first came into theater. If you remember, we replaced Task Force Rough Rider out of 4th ID's DSB. They afforded us the same opportunity. They had a sustainment conference. They pulled in all of the sustainment enterprise in the area to help us get to know each other, but also to kind of let us understand where the area of operations needed to go with sustainment architecture. We've done this now 3 times. This one that we just concluded, once again, we're able to do the same thing with Task Force Wagon Master with Force Cav Division's DSB as they take over the mission from us. These conferences are a phenomenal opportunity to just kind of reflect on what we've done over the last 9 months, assess kind of our progress on where we are, and then reattack. That's what it's about, is continuing to improve the posture and the architecture for sustainment, along with the lethality inside of AO Victory. And I think that it afforded us just that, the opportunity to be able to pass on not only the good in which Task Force Provider accomplished here, which is phenomenal to see in writing, but also to help Task Force Wagon Master with their objectives and to set those as they come in. Some of the things that I think you could really see in this conference was the improvement and just the establishment of a distribution network, both northern, central, and southern within the AO, and the effort that went into that. That wasn't just with Task Force Provider, that was with all the sustainers, the entire sustainment enterprise. To create that, it not only allows us to get supplies to the point of need fast, it allows us to train sustainers from the FSCs, from the BSBs, from the DSB, all at the same time by the establishment of LRPs and trailer transfer points, etc. We've been able to increase and further move materiel around the AO by establishing an SSA up in the Baltics, first ever. Incredible. Once again, it took a lot of people to make that happen. And then having the right sustainment in the right place, in the right location, at the right time is I think, a true mark of what the task force has done over the last 9 months. And I'm really excited to see what Task Force Wagon Master is going to do over the next 9.
Well, one more note about the Sustainment Conference, ma'am. I imagine that this is also a good way for supported units, external units, and lateral sustainment units to recognize opportunities to enhance the sustainment enterprise here as well.
Yeah, absolutely, and that is absolutely one of the intents of the conference, is to allow everyone, because we all have different perspectives depending on where we're sitting inside of the AO, is to really get that feedback and that bottom-up refinement on, hey, is this working? How can we do it better? And where Task Force Wagon Master can put some effort behind that. I think that it definitely came to the end state that maybe some ammunition storage locations would be something that Task Force Wagon Master can dig into. But it's just the further refinement of sustainment to continue to build the theater and set the theater with Class 5 as one of those objectives, perhaps maybe even some ADR and maintenance capabilities here inside of the AO.
If we could, ma'am, talk about the supply support activity that Task Force Provider and Sustainment Enterprise Partners opened in Latvia. I think that it would make a great vignette to demonstrate the expansion of the capability and the readiness that it provides forces stationed in the Baltics, and again, that deterrence to aggression in the region.
Yeah, that's a great point, and I'm going to kind of back into that question a little bit with starting with the distribution networks. Getting that distribution network set was incredibly important because it allowed our 88 mics and our transporters to spend less time on the road because there were more of them doing it. So by doing that and then adding the SSA on top of that, with what's different about this SSA in the Baltics than what we have inside of the AO, it is aligned where there's lines in that SSA that accounts for all different types of platforms that are up in it. It's not a typical common ASL or castle. It has parts on it for aviation, for armor, for artillery, for all of the platforms we have up there, rather than having to come all the way back down to Poland, to be able to move stuff back up. And to have that amount of material up north of the Suwałki Gap, I think is incredibly important for the AO.
Ma'am, one thing that was discussed in the Sustainment Conference is how Task Force Provider really worked to transition early on from logistics support that I think was primarily commercial and contracted transportation throughout area of operations victory to tactical trucks and tactical communications. And so Task Force Provider really moved to get the majority of the sustainment support in those Army tactical convoys. Could you tell us a little bit about why that was important?
Yeah, no, I really appreciate that question. If you think back to the last time we did one of these, we discussed the need to develop lethality within the task force as we came in. That was one of our early objectives. And it certainly presented itself to us the second we got here, when we realized that we had so many distribution operations happening in those box trucks and those white trucks or the commercial trucks. We did shift, and that was a primary objective. How do we train our soldiers? Look, every soldier deserves to be able to survive in conflict, and we're providing them that opportunity by putting them in their green trucks, by allowing them to do tactical convoys, by enforcing tactical communications, because if we don't do it now, we're missing an opportunity. Our soldiers had 9 months that they were able to work on tactical comms and tactical convoys every single day. There's no other environment that allows our soldiers, particularly our sustainment soldiers, to train like that than this one. So I'm very grateful that our soldiers had the opportunity to build that lethality through tactical convoys with tactical communications.
Could you help us better understand the scope and the scale of that distribution network that we've talked about, that Task Force Provider soldiers were not just inheriting but expanding on to increase that logistics capability to the Alliance here in Eastern Europe?
Over the course of the last 9 months, particularly over the period of time that we've been tracking mileage, we're talking about over 3 million kilometers driven by Task Force Provider soldiers. And for context, that's roughly 4 trips to the moon and back. And I think that's pretty incredible to think about all of that training that our sustainers were able to get out of this rotation.
One thing, ma'am, that I thought was really cool is how Task Force Provider was able to leverage commercially procured and Army-issued GPS-enabled route reconnaissance equipment to better create an understanding what ideal routes would be, and just how that impacted the capability of the Alliance, both in contingency situation or under large-scale combat conditions. Can we talk a little bit about route reconnaissance and analysis.
Yeah, and that's a great tie-in to a meeting that I had just yesterday with our Polish counterparts at the National Movement Coordination Cell. What we've been able to do through use of our Corps of Engineers giving us these assets, it's the Google car of AO Victory, where we would send it out on these routes to be able to assess the width of the road, the height of the bridge. Can our vehicles, or should our vehicles, more importantly, go on particular roadways for the safety of our host nation here? So we've been able to establish 39 routes here in AO Victory that we believe are safe for our soldiers to travel and transit in, and also safe for our host nation. In working with our counterparts here, we believe we're on glide path for a common operating language tied to tactical route names, and I think that's in the near future of AO Victory, and I think Task Force Wagon Master is going to take that all the way to the end for us.
So establishing those routes, establishing that common operating picture for us and our allies, it enhances readiness, it prepares the alliance for operations under contingency conditions, under combat conditions.
Oh, absolutely. This is the way we would fight. We are training how we would fight. We have tactical road names, we have tactical route names, we do tactical convoys with good, solid convoy briefs by well-trained and certified convoy commanders. We've trained over 200 convoy commanders in this AO, and I think every day our ability to make this a little bit better has made our soldiers that much safer.
To understand that not only were task force provider soldiers on the roads, turning wrenches, delivering fuel, everything that sustainers do technically on a day-to-day basis, they were also out there honing their lethality and their tactical proficiencies, conducting mounted machine gunnery, convoy live fire exercises, the convoy platform protection with the M240 Bravo, the M2 machine guns, knowing that in future large-scale combat environment, sustainment will be contested.
Yeah, once again, that was our top priorities as we entered the AO here 9 months ago, was making sure that we were taking every opportunity to make our soldiers lethal logisticians. I think we've absolutely done that. We've created that convoy live fire progression for this AO, and I think it will continue to enhance in the future. We've had drone buster training, really detailed force protection rehearsals. I think every day we've built our lethality here.
It's not just training the soldiers of the 3rd Division Sustainment Brigade. This was an effort across the multi-composition task force to include the active duty, the Army Reserve, the National Guard units, all underneath task force provider. So what has that been like, integrating so many different units from 22 different states across the U.S. into a cohesive task force that accomplished all these things that we've talked about?
You know, that's probably the number one takeaway from this deployment. As you said, we've had task force provider soldiers, multi-compo from 22 different states, coming at it a force flow, all on a different dynamic timeline. What it's really forced us to do was to have that continuous process of how we build the team here, but also how we build lethality, how we build the sustainment structure. And each time one of those organizations came into our task force, they were bringing something that we didn't have before. What they were able to add to this task force, I think, is really what makes this task force as special as it is.
So one of the conversations that comes up frequently is being successful at managing that multi-composition force, a large and widespread task force with soldiers stationed as far north as Estonia, the Baltics, and working as far south in AO Victory as Romania in the Balkans. And I know that some locations were more austere than others. So can we talk a little bit about the Prevention Workforce Initiative, which was designed to bring creative minds and agencies together to increase support to soldiers under 8 protective factors that I'm going to read off here: food security, personal wellness, leadership, healthy outlets, healthy relationships, spiritual connectedness, finances, and safe housing and communities.
The way the task force is built, it's absolutely necessary to have some type of prevention system in place. The way that I see our prevention system and the way that I've seen us do this is really in line with kind of the targeting methodology. We didn't necessarily know initially the best way to get after all of the protective factors that you just mentioned. However, we knew we had to do it. At the end of the day, we wanted to create the environment in which our soldiers could thrive within AO Victory. And I believe we did that. And the way we did that is through this continuous and integrated process with a solid workforce consisting of everyone from our SARC to the chaplain, MFT, MRT, our MFLEC across the street, the use of our partners from the USO, MWR, Red Cross, and everyone else that we had, command teams that we had within the task force to develop this prevention workforce on a timeline where there was a working group that led to a decision board on every Saturday where we really looked at the protective factors to try to figure out ways to make life better for our soldiers under each of those protective factors. I think what was really critical and probably the biggest add through that continuous improvement cycle was the add of the node assessments. And if we look at every node, so we had, as you've already mentioned, 22 states, but at any given time we could have 12 different patches in our organization, over 9 countries and 15 different locations. It was really important for us to deep dive each and every node. No matter how few soldiers we had there, we needed to understand what their environment was so we can improve it in a way that it can allow them to thrive in what they're doing here in AO Victory. And that decision board every Saturday led to commitments and resources that went to each of those nodes to improve them. And that's why I kind of liken it to that target decision cycle, because it allowed us to reassess and see where, hey, maybe we don't have this one right. Readdress, okay, are there not getting enough vegetables here? Or they don't have that finance office available in a particular location. But that reassessment, particularly because of the timeline in which our forces flow in, all throughout the 9-month process, not everybody came in one solid group on the same time. The constant inject of additional groups of soldiers in here made it absolutely necessary for us to reassess that each and every week.
The relief is here. The transfer of authority ceremony is just days away. What is foremost in yours and Sergeant Major and all of our leaders' minds as we prepare to hand this mission off and return to Georgia?
First and foremost, unbelievably proud of what this task force has been able to do here. Unbelievably grateful for what we've gained as leaders, as soldiers, as a task force, as a team since we've been here. The thing that I'm really looking forward to is getting our soldiers back home with their families, appropriately, properly, and safely integrating them back into home station, and then continue to drive off of all of the lessons we've learned here into creating a better environment back home.
Thank you, ma'am, for talking with us today. At this point, before we sign off, do you have a message for our listeners to close this conversation out?
Yeah, so I'm super proud of the team. We've learned so much since we've been here. What I'm really looking forward to is getting the team back together as we redeploy shortly within the next 2 weeks or so. It's been a while since we've been together all as one brigade. We've had our Alpha Company who's recently returned from CENTCOM, looking forward to getting to spend some time with them. We have part of our 135th still in Honduras, and we're looking forward to getting out there to visit them as well. But otherwise, getting the rest of the brigade back together in one place at Fort Stewart so we continue to build the team there.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thanks for your time, Sergeant Hull.
And thank you to our listeners for tuning in to the Marne Report. This has been Sergeant First Class Jason Hull, 3rd Division Sustainment Brigade Public Affairs, 3rd Infantry Division, Heart of the Rock, Rock of the Marne.
If you or someone you know needs crisis support, dial 988. This 3-digit dialing code connects directly to the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline, where compassionate, accessible care and support is available for anyone experiencing mental health-related distress. The 988 Lifeline helps thousands of people struggling to overcome suicidal crises or mental health-related distress every day. There is hope. Call or text 988 today.